The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its curved walls covered in the flags and symbols of 47 different species, who had long ago claimed dominion over this corner of the universe. And on this particular day, the air inside that ancient hall carried a tension that made even the oldest diplomats shift uncomfortably in their seats. High Counselor Sarath, a being whose body resembled a tall pillar of living crystal, stood at the central podium and watched as Ambassador Valen of the Vorthani Dominion made his way to the speaking platform. The Vorthani was a fearsome creature, standing 8 feet tall with scales the color of dried blood and eyes that burned like yellow fire. Honored members of this council, Valen began, his voice echoing through the chamber like thunder rolling across mountains. I come before you today to discuss a matter of grave importance, the humans. A murmur spread through the assembled delegates. The humans were a young species, having only discovered faster than light travel a mere 2 centuries ago, and most of the elder races regarded them as little more than clever animals, who had stumbled upon technology they did not truly understand. These creatures, Valen continued, his clawed hands sweeping through the air in a gesture of contempt, have expanded into the Telos Expanse, a region of space that has belonged to the Vorthani Dominion for over 10,000 years. We have sent them 3 warnings, 3 generous offers to withdraw peacefully, and 3 times they have ignored us. Counselor Mira of the Thyssen Collective, a being who appeared as a cloud of shimmering light particles, spoke up from her position on the eastern wing of the chamber. What exactly are the humans doing in the Expanse, Ambassador? They have established a colony. Valen spat the word as if it tasted foul on his tongue. On the 4th planet of the Kepler 442 system. 40,000 of them, building cities and farms and factories as if the land belongs to them. And what response do you propose? High Counselor Sarath asked, though everyone in the chamber already knew the answer. Valen's mouth stretched into something that might have been a smile on a less terrifying face. The Dominion requests the Council's blessing to conduct a corrective action. We will send 200 warships to remove the human presence from our territory, and we will make an example that all young species will remember for generations to come. The delegates exchanged glances. This was not an unusual request, for the Galactic Council had authorized similar actions dozens of times throughout its long history. Younger species needed to learn their place, and sometimes that lesson required a firm hand. Does anyone speak in opposition? Sarath asked, and the chamber remained silent. The humans had no allies here, no friends among the elder races who might defend them. Far across the galaxy, on the blue-green world called Earth, Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood in the command center of United Earth Naval Command and studied the reports coming in from the border. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair cut short in military fashion, and she had spent 40 years preparing for exactly this moment. They have authorized the attack, her aide informed her, handing over a datapad containing intercepted communications from the council chamber. The humans had listening posts scattered throughout the galaxy, hidden satellites that the elder races had never bothered to search for. 200 ships, Tanaka said quietly, reading the numbers with a calm expression that revealed nothing of her thoughts. How many vessels do we have at Kepler 442? 12, Admiral. The patrol flotilla under Captain Morrison. Tanaka nodded slowly and turned to face the massive holographic display that dominated the room. It showed the position of every human ship in known space, and to an outside observer, the scattered points of light would have seemed pitifully few. Send Captain Morrison his orders, she said, her voice steady and cold as winter ice. He's to defend the colony at all costs and buy time for evacuation procedures. Tell him. She paused for just a moment. Tell him that Earth remembers its children. 3 weeks later, the Vorthani Armada dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. 200 warships, each one bristling with weapons that could crack open a planet, arranged in perfect formation like a wall of death moving through the void. Commander Thrax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, and watched the tactical display with eager anticipation. This would be easy, he thought, almost too easy to be called a proper battle. "Scan for human vessels," he ordered, and his crew obeyed instantly. "Commander," his sensor officer reported, "we detect 12 human ships holding position near the fourth planet. They appear to be—" The officer paused, confusion evident in his voice. "They appeared to be moving to intercept." Thrax laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. 12 ships against 200. Are these humans brave or simply stupid? Perhaps both, Commander. The human flotilla advanced through the darkness of space. 12 vessels that seemed impossibly small against the might of the Vorthani armada. On the bridge of the lead ship, Captain David Morrison gripped the arms of his command chair and took a deep breath. "All hands," he spoke into the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain. You all know why we are here and what we face. Behind us are 40,000 civilians, men, women, and children who came to this world seeking a better life. We are all that stands between them and annihilation." He looked around at his crew, seeing fear in some eyes and determination in others. "Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. Today we teach these aliens that we do not go quietly into the night. All ships prepare for combat. The first shots of humanity's greatest war were about to be fired, and the Galactic Council had no idea what they had just unleashed upon the stars." The void between the two fleets shrank with every passing second, and Commander Thrax of the Vorthani Dominion watched his tactical display with the casual interest of a predator observing prey that had nowhere left to run. This would be over quickly, he thought. Perhaps too quickly to even call it a proper engagement. "Human vessels are accelerating," his sensor officer announced, and something in the young officer's voice made Thrax look more closely at the data streaming across his screen. "What is their acceleration rate?" he demanded. "Commander, they are." The officer checked his readings twice before speaking again. "They are accelerating at 47 gravities." Thrax felt his scales tighten against his body in surprise. No living creature could survive such forces, for the blood would be crushed from their bodies and their bones would shatter into powder. That is impossible. "Recheck your sensors." "I have checked them 3 times, Commander. The readings are accurate." Across the gap of empty space, Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and felt the familiar pressure of acceleration. Dampeners working at maximum capacity. Human engineers had spent decades perfecting the technology that allowed their crews to survive forces that would kill any other species in the galaxy. "All ships," Morrison commanded through the fleet communication channel, "execute attack pattern Omega-7. Target their command vessels first and create chaos in their formation." The 12 human ships did not behave as the Vorthani expected. Instead of forming defensive lines or attempting to flee, they dove straight into the heart of the enemy armada like arrows fired by the hand of an angry god. Commander Thrax watched in disbelief as the human vessels weaved through his carefully organized formation, moving with a speed and agility that his targeting computers could not track. Plasma bolts and missile salvos filled the space around them, but the humans seemed to dance between the attacks as if they knew where each shot would land before it was fired. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead vessel." Thrax roared, slamming his fist against the arm of his command chair. 100 Vorthani warships turned their weapons on Morrison's ship, pouring enough firepower to melt a small moon into the path of the human captain. But Morrison had already anticipated the response, and his vessel twisted away at the last moment while 2 other human ships swooped in from unexpected angles. The first Vorthani warship exploded in a brilliant flash of light and debris. Then another and another and another. How are they doing this? Thrax demanded of his officers, but no one had an answer. The humans fought in ways that defied everything the Dominion knew about space combat. On the colony world below, 40,000 civilians watched the battle unfold in the night sky. Flashes of light like distant lightning marked the death of ships and the end of lives. And the people of Kepler 442b held their breath and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. Governor Sarah Chun stood in her office and monitored the evacuation procedures. Transport ships were loading as quickly as possible, but she knew they would never get everyone off the planet in time if the battle was lost. "Governor," her assistant called out, "Captain Morrison is hailing us." Morrison's face appeared on the screen, and Chun could see the strain in his eyes, even as explosions flashed in the background behind him. "Governor, you need to speed up the evacuation. We are holding them back, but we have already lost 3 ships, and we cannot maintain this forever. How long can you give us?" Chun asked, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her heart. 2 hours, Morrison replied. "Maybe 3 if luck is on our side." After that, he did not need to finish the sentence. Back in the chaos of battle, the human flotilla continued its deadly dance among the Vorthani armada. Lieutenant Commander James Okonkwo, nephew of the fleet admiral and pilot of a small gunship called the Relentless, pushed his vessel through maneuvers that would have made his instructors back on Earth weep with pride. "Coming around for another attack run," he announced to his crew. "Target that big bastard on the left, the one with all the fancy decorations." His weapons officer grinned despite the danger. "That is their flagship, Commander." "Are you sure you want to poke the hornet's nest?" "I want to kick it over and set it on fire," Okonkwo replied, and his ship surged forward with engines blazing. Commander Thrax saw the small human vessel racing toward his flagship and felt something he had not experienced in a very long time: genuine concern. These humans were insane, completely and utterly insane, and that made them more dangerous than any enemy he had ever faced. "All-point defense systems, target that ship," he commanded, but the human vessel was already within their defensive perimeter. The Relentless unleashed everything it had at close range. Railgun rounds tore through the flagship's armor while missiles detonated against critical systems. Thrax was thrown from his chair as his ship shuddered under the assault. "Damage report," he screamed. "Engines are offline, Commander. We have hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Casualties are..." The officer stopped speaking as another explosion rocked the vessel. As the hours passed, the battle transformed into something the Vorthani had never experienced. They had expected to crush the humans in minutes, but instead they found themselves locked in a desperate struggle against an enemy that refused to die. When the fighting finally ended, Commander Thrax stood among the ruins of his bridge and stared at the casualty reports with eyes that could not believe what they were seeing. Of his 200 warships, only 32 remained operational, and many of those were badly damaged. The humans had lost 9 of their 12 ships, but the 3 survivors still held formation above the colony world, daring the Vorthani to try again. "This is impossible," Thrax whispered to himself. "This should not have happened." Far away on Earth, Admiral Tanaka received Captain Morrison's final report and allowed herself a small, grim smile. The first test had been passed, but she knew this was only the beginning. "Send word to all sector commands," she ordered her staff. "Tell them to begin preparations. The Vorthani will be back, and next time they will bring friends." The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not the easy prey they had assumed, and the lesson would be written in fire and blood across the stars. The news of the Vorthani defeat spread through the Galactic Council like fire through dry grass. And within hours, every species in known space was talking about the impossible battle at Kepler 442b. How could 12 ships destroy 168? They asked, and what did this mean for the established order of the galaxy? High Counselor Sareth called an emergency session, and for the first time in centuries, every single delegate attended in person. The great chamber hummed with anxious whispers as Ambassador Valen took his place at the speaking platform with fury burning in his yellow eyes. "This outrage cannot stand," Valen roared, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. "The humans have committed an act of war against the Dominion, and they must be punished for their crimes." "An act of war?" Counselor Myra's voice carried a hint of amusement despite the serious nature of the discussion. "Ambassador, it was your ships that attacked their colony. The humans were simply defending themselves. They killed over 50,000 of our warriors." Valen shot back. "They must pay for every drop of Vorthani blood that was spilled." High Counselor Sareth raised a crystalline hand to silence the growing argument. "The question before us is not one of blame, but one of response. The humans have proven themselves more capable than we anticipated, and we must decide how to proceed." An elderly delegate from the Kreth Federation, a species that resembled massive armored beetles, spoke up from his position near the back of the chamber. "Perhaps we should consider a diplomatic solution. The humans have shown they can fight, and continuing this conflict could prove costly for everyone involved." "Diplomacy?" Valen spat the word like poison. "You would have us negotiate with animals. The Vorthani do not bow to lesser species, and we will not start now." "Then what do you propose?" Sareth asked. Valen turned to address the entire assembly, his scales rippling with barely suppressed aggression. "I propose that the Council authorize a full military response. Not 200 ships, but 2,000 drawn from the combined fleet of all member species. We will travel to the human homeworld and burn it until nothing remains but ash and memory." A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the delegates considered the proposal. The combined fleet had not been mobilized in over 500 years, and its last deployment had resulted in the complete extinction of an upstart species that had dared to challenge the Council's authority. "This seems excessive," Counselor Myra said carefully. "The humans are primitive. Surely a smaller force would be sufficient to teach them their place without resorting to genocide." "You did not see what they did to our ships," Valen replied, and for just a moment his voice held something that sounded almost like fear. "These creatures are not what we thought they were. They fight like demons, and if we do not crush them now, they will only grow stronger." The vote was called, and one by one the delegates registered their decisions. When the final tally was announced, the authorization had passed by a margin of 42-5. On Earth, Admiral Tanaka received word of the Council's decision through her network of hidden listening posts. She stood before the holographic map of known space and studied the positions of her forces with calculating eyes. 2,000 ships, her aide said quietly. "That is more firepower than we can possibly match. Admiral, perhaps we should consider evacuation?" "Evacuation to where?" Tanaka replied without looking away from the map. "There is nowhere in the galaxy where the Council cannot reach us. If we run, they will hunt us down like animals. Our only option is to stand and fight. But how can we win against such odds?" Tanaka finally turned to face her young officer, and there was something in her eyes that made him take an involuntary step backward. "Who said anything about winning? All we need to do is make them bleed. We need to show them that the cost of destroying humanity will be greater than they are willing to pay." 3 weeks later, the combined fleet assembled at the edge of the Sol system. 2,000 warships from a dozen different species, representing the greatest concentration of military power the galaxy had ever seen. Their weapons could shatter planets, their shields could withstand the fury of a star, and their crews were veterans of 100 different conflicts. Admiral Kroth, a massive Vorthani warrior who had been given command of the Armada, stood on the bridge of his flagship and surveyed his forces with pride. This would be the greatest victory in galactic history, and his name would be remembered for all eternity. "Scan the system," he commanded. "I want to know exactly what the humans have waiting for us." His sensor officer worked the controls with practiced efficiency, and after a moment, the results appeared on the main display. Admiral Krath stared at the screen and felt confusion replace his earlier confidence. 47 ships? He said, his voice thick with disbelief. "That is all they have? 47 ships against 2,000? "It appears so, Admiral. They are holding formation near the third planet, the one they call Earth." Krath let out a laugh that echoed through the bridge like thunder in a canyon. "These humans are either incredibly brave or impossibly stupid. Either way, this will be over quickly." He activated the fleet-wide communication channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Krath. The enemy force is negligible, but do not underestimate them. Remember what happened at Kepler 442b and show no mercy. Today we end the human threat forever." 2,000 engines roared to life, and the greatest armada in galactic history began its advance toward Earth. The humans watched them come with steady eyes and steady hands, and not one of them showed any sign of fear. Captain Morrison, commanding one of the 3 surviving ships from the first battle, opened a channel to the human fleet. "Remember your training and remember your duty. We fight not for glory, but for every man, woman, and child on the world behind us. Today, we show the galaxy what it means to be human." The final battle for Earth was about to begin, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The battle began with a storm of fire that lit up the darkness of space like a second sun. 2,000 alien warships unleashed their fury upon the small human fleet, and for a moment it seemed as if nothing could survive such an overwhelming assault. But the human vessels were not where the aliens expected them to be. They scattered in all directions, moving with the impossible speed and agility that had shocked the Vorthani at Kepler 442b. And suddenly, the organized attack became a chaotic mess of missed shots and friendly fire. Admiral Krath watched in growing frustration as his carefully planned assault fell apart within the first 10 minutes. The humans were everywhere and nowhere at once, appearing behind his ships one moment and vanishing into the void the next. "How are they moving so fast?" he demanded of his tactical officers. "Our tracking systems cannot lock onto them." "Admiral, they appear to be using some kind of micro-jump technology. They are making hundreds of small hyperspace transitions to avoid our weapons." Krath slammed his fist against his command console hard enough to crack the screen, then flood the area with suppression fields. "I want their jump drives neutralized." But the humans had anticipated this response. While the alien fleet focused on generating hyperspace suppression, the human ships switched to conventional evasive maneuvers and revealed another terrifying advantage. The space around the combined fleet suddenly filled with thousands of small objects moving at incredible velocities. Kinetic kill vehicles, launched from hidden positions throughout the solar system, slammed into the alien warships with devastating effect. Where did those come from? Krath roared as 3 of his cruisers vanished in expanding clouds of debris. "Unknown, Admiral. Our sensors did not detect any launch signatures." The humans had spent decades preparing for this moment, hiding weapons platforms in the asteroid belt and among the moons of the outer planets. Every rock and ice chunk in the solar system had been turned into a potential threat, and the aliens had no way to protect themselves from attacks that came from every direction at once. Hour after hour the battle raged, and hour after hour the combined fleet paid for its arrogance in blood and fire. Human ships darted through the chaos like wolves hunting among a herd of panicked cattle, striking at vulnerable points and disappearing before the aliens could respond. Captain Morrison led his squadron against a cluster of Vorthani battleships, his weapons blazing with relentless fury. Target their engine sections. If they cannot move, they cannot fight. 3 enemy vessels lost power and began to drift helplessly. Morrison did not waste time destroying them, for there were too many other threats that demanded his attention. By the 6th hour of combat, Admiral Krath realized that something had gone terribly wrong. His fleet had lost nearly 300 ships, and the humans showed no signs of weakening. If anything, they seemed to be growing bolder with each passing moment. "This is impossible," he whispered to himself. "How can 47 ships do this to us?" When the 11th hour arrived, the combined fleet had been reduced to barely 1,000 operational vessels. The space around Earth was filled with wreckage and bodies, and the survivors of the alien armada huddled together in a defensive formation that they had never expected to need. Admiral Krath opened a communication channel to the human fleet, his voice heavy with exhaustion and disbelief. "Human Commander, this is Admiral Krath of the Combined Fleet. I demand your immediate surrender." A moment of silence passed, and then a new face appeared on the screen, not Captain Morrison, but an older man with dark skin and eyes that seemed to look right through Krath's soul. "Admiral Krath," the man said calmly, "I am Fleet Admiral James Okonkwo of the United Earth Navy. I am afraid I must decline your generous offer." "You are in no position to decline anything," Krath shouted. "Your fleet is destroyed. You have nothing left." Okonkwo smiled, and there was something in that smile that made Krath's blood run cold. "Admiral, I think there has been a misunderstanding. Let me clarify something for you." The image on Krath's screen expanded to show a holographic display of the entire Sol system, and what he saw made his heart stop beating for 3 full seconds. Thousands of signatures. No, tens of thousands of signatures. Ships emerging from behind planets and moons, rising from hidden bases on asteroids and comets, decloaking from positions where they had waited in perfect silence throughout the entire battle. "The vessels you have been fighting," Okonkwo continued, his voice as calm as if he were discussing the weather, "are our border fleet. Patrol ships crewed by reservists and volunteers who offered to buy us time." "Buy you time for what?" Krath managed to ask, though he already knew the answer. "The ships behind me represent the United Earth Navy, our actual military force." Okonkwo leaned forward, and his eyes locked with Krath's across the vast distance of space. "What you fought, Admiral, was only the initial wave." The transmission was relayed to the Galactic Council chamber, where every delegate watched in horrified silence. High Counselor Sareth stood frozen at his podium, unable to speak or move as the implications of what he was seeing crashed over him like a tidal wave. That is, Ambassador Valen's voice cracked as he struggled to process the impossible images on the screen. "That is more ships than our entire combined fleet." "It appears," Counselor Myra said slowly, "that we have made a terrible mistake." The silence in the chamber stretched on and on, broken only by the soft hum of the display screens showing humanity's true power. 47 species had united to crush a young race they considered primitive and weak, and now they faced a force that could crush them all in return. On his burning bridge, Admiral Krath made the only decision that could save what remained of his fleet. He lowered his head in defeat and spoke the words that no Vorthani had ever spoken before. "Fleet Admiral Okonkwo, the combined fleet requests terms of surrender." Humanity had won. The surrender of the combined fleet sent shockwaves through every corner of the galaxy. Species that had ruled the stars for millions of years suddenly found themselves facing a terrifying new reality. Humanity was not the primitive civilization they had assumed, and everything they thought they knew about the young species had been wrong. Admiral Krath and the survivors of his armada were treated with surprising dignity. Human medical teams boarded the damaged alien vessels to tend to the wounded, and repair crews helped restore life support systems to ships that would have otherwise become floating tombs. "Why are you helping us?" Krath asked Fleet Admiral Okonkwo when they met face-to-face aboard the human flagship. "We came here to destroy your world." We would have killed every last one of your people without mercy or regret. Okonkwo studied the massive alien warrior for a long moment before responding. Because we are not like you. We do not believe in unnecessary cruelty, and we do not take pleasure in the suffering of others. Your crews followed orders, and we will not punish them for the decisions of their leaders. Your people are strange creatures, Krath admitted. I do not understand you at all. Perhaps that is why you lost, Okonkwo replied with a slight smile. 1 month after the battle, a human delegation arrived at the Galactic Council chamber for the first time in history. Ambassador Elena Vasquez led the group, a tall woman with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She walked into the great hall with her head held high and her shoulders back, showing no fear despite being surrounded by species that had tried to exterminate her people just weeks before. High Counselor Sarath rose from his position at the central podium and addressed the assembly. We are gathered here today to discuss the recent conflict and its implications for the future of our galaxy. Ambassador Vasquez, you have requested the opportunity to speak. Vasquez stepped forward and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of different worlds, honored members of the Galactic Council. I come before you not as a conqueror seeking tribute, but as a representative of a species that wishes only to live in peace. A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembly. This was not what they had expected from the beings who had just humiliated the greatest military force in known history. For 200 years, Vasquez continued, humanity has studied your civilization. We have watched how you treat younger species, how you crush any race that dares to challenge your authority. We learned your history, and we prepared accordingly. She paused to let her words sink in before speaking again. The fleet you faced at Earth was built in secret, hidden in asteroid fields and underground facilities across 100 different worlds. We hoped we would never need to use it, but we knew that hope alone would not protect our children. Ambassador Valen rose from his seat, his scales rippling with barely contained anger. You deceived us. You pretended to be weak while building an armada in the shadows. We survived, Vasquez replied calmly. Is that not what any species would do when faced with extinction? Would the Vorthani not do the same if your positions were reversed? Valen opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. The human had made a point that he could not argue against. Humanity does not seek war, Vasquez declared. We do not wish to conquer your worlds or enslave your people. All we have ever wanted is a chance to grow and thrive among the stars like every other species in this chamber. What do you want from us? High Counselor Sarath asked. We want a seat on this council, Vasquez answered. We want the same rights and protections that every member species enjoys. We want to be recognized as equals, not as animals to be hunted or pets to be controlled. And if we refuse? Another delegate called out. Vasquez smiled, and there was something in that smile that made several of the assembled aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. Then we will return to our corner of the galaxy and continue to build. Every year our technology advances, and every year our population grows. In a century, perhaps two, we will be strong enough that your refusal will no longer matter. The threat was delivered so calmly that it took several seconds for the delegates to fully comprehend what she was saying. This human was not boasting or trying to intimidate. She was simply stating facts. However, Vasquez continued, I do not believe that conflict is in anyone's best interest. We have proven that we can fight, but we would much rather trade and explore and learn. There is so much we could offer each other if we chose cooperation over competition. The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Old alliances were tested, ancient rivalries were set aside, and species that had not agreed on anything for millennia found themselves united by a common concern. What would happen if they rejected humanity's offer? In the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that came with it. 5 years later, Ambassador Vasquez stood in the same chamber and watched as her successor took his place among the delegates. Humanity had proven to be valuable members of the galactic community, contributing advances in medicine and engineering that benefited every species in known space. But she knew that underneath the polite diplomacy and friendly cooperation, the other species had not forgotten the lesson of that terrible battle. They had seen what humanity was capable of, and they would never make the mistake of underestimating the young species again. Admiral Tanaka, now retired, once explained humanity's philosophy to a curious alien diplomat who asked why the humans had hidden their true strength for so long. There is an old saying on our world: speak softly and carry a big stick. We prefer peace, but we are always ready for war. We hope our friends will never see us fight, but we make certain our enemies will never forget. As the centuries passed, humanity grew and flourished among the stars. They made alliances, built wonders, and earned the respect of species that had once looked down upon them as primitive creatures. But they never forgot the lessons of their early years, and they never stopped preparing. For the humans understood something that the elder races had learned too late. You cannot know everything about a species until you have pushed them to their limits. And when you push humanity, you had better be prepared for what pushes back. And somewhere in the records of the Galactic Council, preserved for all eternity, was the moment when everything changed. The frozen expressions on 1,000 alien faces when Fleet Admiral James Okonkwo smiled and said those unforgettable words. That was only the initial wave.